Oh, you guys are here? Oh, is it time? It's time for books. Time for books. Let's read book. Oh, not this book. Wait, what book are we reading? We'll figure it out. Who are you?
Well, I am the host of the 800s, and I think you are too,
Oh,
Adam.
shoot.
Oh, and who's that we can't? Oh, yeah, that guy behind the screen, Alan. Thanks for making this happen. And welcome to this month's kind of zany episode of the 800s. We're happy to have you here, and we've all been introduced, so let's dive right into the plugs.
If you joined us for our pre-faces part of the show, you heard some music that was Fearless First by Incompetech. If you would like to check out other music and scores that Incompetech produces, head over to filmmusic.io for more. There you can also find music from other sources as well. It's a great website for all of your audio needs. Check it out today. We have a YouTube channel. We are the DM's Table on YouTube. You should check us out. The link is below your video. Also, if you would like a 1 month free subscription to Audible, head over to dmstable.com/audible so we can get those sweet, sweet rewards for telling them that we told you to go to them. Other things, let's see here. We pay for the show with Patreon and Etsy. Patreon link is below the video. The smallest increment is just $2, and that gets you the right to vote on what book we read next. So you should totally check it out. Etsy, dmstable.com/Etsy will get you to our Etsy page. There you can find 3D printed nerd memorabilia as well as some cool digital art. You should check it out if you are a nerd. And if you're on our show, you're probably a nerd. So go check it out. If you would like to chit chat with us outside of the show, we have 2 social media accounts. That's Facebook and X. On Facebook, we're at the DM's Table, and X, we're at DM's Table. Hit us up if you want to stay in the loop. Also, we have a Discord server where we talk all things nerdy, not just books. If you would like to join our Discord, feel free to hit us up on our socials, and we'll get you that link. I think that's about it. If you have any other questions, you can always hit up dmstable.com, where you'll find all of the info about everything.
Oh, everything, even the answer to life, the universe.
Yes, so long as you ask.
All right, so why don't we get into the book we're reading this month, which we will be discussing A Forest of Vanity and Valor by A.P. Beswick. We are taken to a land where magic has been banned by the king and his practitioners hunted like animals. The hunters and tax collectors live lavishly off the spoils granted by the king and his liege lords. Virio and his lot are particularly good at their jobs, and they enjoy the high life it brings with it. That is, until Virio's desire for the best in life gets the best of him. He loses everything and is denounced by the spurned liege lord, becoming the hunted. Virio and his fellows hide deep in the magical forest, confronted by both their vanity and maybe finding their valor.
Nice. That is definitely the book that we will be talking about tonight. If this is your first time visiting our show, I'll give you a quick rundown of how we work. We are a discussion channel. What that means is Alex or myself will pose a topic or question to discuss. We'll pop it up on the screen there, right below our faces, for you to see at any time. And we'll discuss back and forth while you guys in chat have the opportunity to type up your thoughts on it and get it in the chat. At any time, if you have something you would like to discuss about the book, feel free to throw it up in chat, and Alex or myself will see it, snag it, and throw it out there for the world to discuss. That's pretty much how it works.
And as always, just a quick little warning that this is a show for adults, and we cover adult topics and content, and while we try not to swear too much, we do sometimes. So bring kids around at your own discretion. Also, we are trying to create a fun and supportive environment over here at the DM's table, and as such, we want people to feel free to nerd out, geek out, dork out, whatever it is, about the things that they love without fear of reprisal or judgment. So, in some, be nice or fuck off.
Gotta change it up every show. It's a requirement.
Not every show, every once in a while I come back around to it, but sometimes you got to keep it a little bit well done. Inside joke for us there, but that being said,
or anybody who was at the last show or two, or whatever show it was.
It was last show. It was only 2 weeks ago. So with that, why don't we get into our forced impressions?
Sure thing. Shall I go first?
Oh, why don't? Why not? Why not?
Yeah, so the audiobook has a pretty good immersion tactic here with the book. I'll talk about that real quick. The audiobook does accents real thick for this book. I forget who the narrator is, but it is definitely one way to really immerse yourself into a world is throw that accent factor in there. This is a shorter book, so obviously we're gonna have to jump right in to the story with this, and that's exactly what we got here. You just kind of jump in, you get a quick background, and then it's off to the races with some infidelity and kind of semi kidnapping. I don't know if it's considered kidnapping, but kind of felt like kidnapping. Either way, pretty exciting start. You kind of get the real dirtbag vibe from our main guy. I forget his name.
Virio.
Virio. Yeah. So yeah, that was my first thought.
I read I did the audiobook as well, and I found it a bit confusing at first. It's a good thing there were accents, because without those accents, man, would that have been hard to follow. I constantly found myself having to go back and being like, wait, why is this all in first person when you're switching characters? And I found that confusing. I get in the book that you'll have the chapter names to like tell you whose perspective it is, but I don't know. I've seen it done better, like way better. And it was a bit confusing. Also, the other thing that wound up being confusing, and I get that this is a part of the book to an extent, is the author sets up a potentially likable character and then a character that just sucks as like your two main ones. Virio being the one that sucks, and what is it? It starts with a J. I don't know. Like, I'll talk a bit more about this later. Why it's so hard to remember everybody in this, but I don't know. I definitely I thought like the characters felt a little flimsy from the beginning, so I was having a hard time kind of getting into it from the beginning personally. But that was just like my first impression of it. It was just like, okay, so we have a guy who's in a position he doesn't want to be in and who's trying to do his best in a crappy system while also not being willing to disrupt said system, and then another guy who's just like, taking advantage of said system. And there's a lot of ways you can do stuff with that, but the characters felt kind of a bit one note to me at the beginning. But, that's what the beginning is for. Set them up, and hopefully you get some development, right?
Yeah. I definitely agree that like there wasn't a ton of fleshing out of characters in this book. I think that goes with just how short it was. Like there just
Mhm.
wasn't any time. I do want to point out like I think the author's intention was for us to be like, all right, Virio's an asshole, and the the steward guy is not an asshole. And
Mhm.
I think that came across well.
Yeah, yeah, and I do have to put that into context. I was just thinking, I was waiting for there to be a little more impact from them, like off the bat, because I'm like, it's a short book. You kind of want to make like I spent a lot of the early parts of the book waiting for like a big impact to be made by these characters on me personally, because with a small book you only have so much time to do that, and I felt like I had to wait a little long.
Yeah. V.S. Drake says he enjoyed the book from a character and story perspective. He forgot that this was a Robin Hood retelling, but I think there was good depth laid for such a short book. I didn't know this was supposed to be a Robin Hood retelling.
Yeah.
I did have those thoughts, but let's talk about
Yeah.
that real quick. I did have those thoughts, especially with the part where he ended up giving the coin to the villagers and stuff. I was like, oh, kind of like Robin Hood. But the entire time I was like, except he's a dick.
Yeah, except he's also the sheriff of Nottingham.
Yeah.
Like it's like, yeah, it felt like I didn't know that either going into this. I ended up finding it out while I was doing, like, I always do like a little bit of research when I'm writing my blurbs, like for the opening, and I found that out and I was like, okay, yeah, I got the Robin Hood vibes. It's but it's like almost backwards.
Yeah.
Like there's like, typically speaking, there's all the sympathy for Robin Hood and none of the sympathy for King John. Um, and his the way he deals with things. And in this book did try to like kind of flip that on its head a little bit, which I respect, the trying a kind of like darker attempt at a more complex retelling. Um, but personally, I thought this fell pretty far short of retelling it in a way that made sense to me. Um,
Yeah.
I again, like, I felt like there was like a lot of like good plot, but like really a lot of the times the characters fell short for me. Um, even going back, and I did the same thing that V.S. Drake did. I was looking for like, I read this twice. And I went back with that knowledge because it was short. Why not?
Yeah.
And I went back looking for characters, and you can tell like some of them, like I forget, like Little John and is definitely in there as like, I can't even remember the name. Uh, uh, but the big burly guy who follows Virio around. Um,
Yeah.
but like, yeah, you can see the characters or glimpses of them. So in that respect, it did do the job.
What? Yeah. Okay.
Oh, what? Yeah. Okay.
V.S. Drake says, can't remember the steward's name, but the character had some great growth. I definitely agree with that. We'll get to
Yeah.
that in a second. I want to give my Robin Hood spiel
Hmm.
real quick.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
yeah, for me, like Robin Hood had in every telling of Robin Hood had a serious purpose. And it just felt like
Hmm.
Virio had the he wanted revenge thing, but it didn't feel like it was serious. Like, yeah, he would like to kill the guy because fuck, he lost the girl he loves and all that, but like he also kind of blamed himself and knew that it was his own damn fault. So
Mm-hmm.
like his motivation just seemed kind of weak.
Yeah, it felt a little wishy-washy in that respect, and I caught the same issue. Also, I don't think there was enough in there for me to care about his stakes at all, because one, their their love starts out not only as an affair, but it's treated kind of flippantly. Like he's like, "Oh yeah, I would have done things for this girl than I wouldn't done for anybody." But the thing is that your bar for that was literally he would have done nothing for anybody, and he would do something for her.
Yeah.
And that's such a low bar that like you're like, okay, she died. Like, hello, consequences. Meet me after my actions. Uh, like it was just really tough to like get behind his motivations because the love itself wasn't shown. It didn't have enough time to like really grip you as anything more than superficial is the wrong word, but like it as something that was that epically changing about him. And like I had the same issue of getting behind his motivation for it, and like you said, that's a quintessential part of Robin Hood.
Yeah. All right, let's chat about general character growth.
Okay.
We've been kind of dancing around it, but what did you think of? Let's leave it at the two main characters, and then if anything stood out to side characters, mention it quickly. But mostly
Yeah.
main characters.
Okay. So Virio like pretty much undeniably has the most like character growth. Maybe not the most character change, but the most character growth. I liked where it wound up. I had trouble getting behind it because it felt super unearned. Like
Yeah,
he doesn't make any move to change who he is as a person. Like he's still like he's like I'm selfish, but I'm not and he's like slowly realizing I'm not a monster, I guess, now that like I'm not benefiting from the system. And again, like it felt like almost every step forward he had, there was something to undercut the step forward that he took. And I get that growth is not like a linear process or anything, but again, he just like randomly comes to these things and none of it felt super well earned. I think arguably the most earned was what he learned from the wizard dude who eventually becomes a part of his camp. And like their conversations are probably the closest it comes to that. Yeah. And yeah, I think Vestrake does have a point. He's more of an anti-hero and less of a hero. And again, I can appreciate that to an extent. It's just, again, what growth there was, even in an anti-hero. An anti-hero either needs to undercut it in a way that feels earned or in a way that feels consistent, and or the growth still needs to be earned. And I don't feel like I got a lot of that in this book, other than maybe again those conversations with the wizard where he actually has to like he's like look at the shit you've done and like look you're doing these things now that are good, what's wrong with doing it this way.
yeah,
It's the only time he's ever actually asked to confront what he does and doesn't act dismissively about it in a way that just feels like forget this, we're going with the plot. You know. Yeah, but I do agree with V.S. Drake. The Steward, it's hard to see it as character growth because it is like regressive, like on a moral perspective. But his growth from casting aside his growth as like a villain or an antagonist, I think more earned because of what V.S. Drake noted earlier is that it showed the corruption of that can come with magic, right?
Yeah.
And I thought that was the more interesting character change, because mostly it was a vehicle for showing like how bad magic can affect you. Jared, that's it. Thank you very much, Via Straight. Yeah. So yeah, it shows like how insidious the magic can be, right? That it infects you from a real place of pain. This guy loved his wife, found out she was going to run, like she was like the one thing he was holding on to, and she betrayed him, and he went nuts, and the magic creeped in there, and any possible redemption he had is literally like magically ripped away from him. And that the kind of villain that he became, I think, was the more earned, even, and it was the more drastic shift. But we're talking like a guy who went from like on a moral scale of like 0 being total evil and 10 being super good. He went from being like a 6 to a 3, but it made the most sense, as opposed to Virio's character, who went from like a 1 or a 2 to like maybe a 5.5. So he went farther. But it didn't make as much sense to me. It didn't feel as earned. So what do you think?
Yeah, I think Jareb was the one who changed the most in this book. Obviously, he was pretty corrupted. I think he was just over it by the end. It's like, even if someone had been like, "Hey, the magic thing is corrupting you, right?" He would have been like, "Yeah, I don't fucking care." I really like the anti-hero perspective that we get from Virio, where it's something that you just don't see a lot of, where one of your mains is an absolute dirtbag, and he's gotta be the hero. Like, I thought it was pretty cool to see that and have it play out in a somewhat logical way. I don't know if I necessarily agree with what Via Strike's saying about the main character being Jareb. I think Virio is still the main character overall, like the overall main. But in terms of specifically this book, I think they're pretty closely split 50-50. Just because, Jareb doesn't really do anything. He's reacting to everything. Yeah. Virio's the one who does the things and moves the story along.
I think that's a good point. I think, though, like what you said and what V.S. Drake was seeing kind of proves my point of Virio not having as much of an earned character growth, is because, like, honestly, it almost makes more sense for Jareb to be the main character, because his growth is more believable. It takes certain steps, and he does play a big part. But as you said, it is much more passive and reactive, as opposed to like the active work of moving the story that comes along with Virio. And yeah.
I think the question of whether or not Virio grew is one that would take book 2 to answer, just because, he was, as V.S. Drake said in his very next message, he was motivated by revenge throughout this book, and we're not 100% sure if, the stuff he ends up doing for the villagers is something that is going to stick around now, or is he just going to be like, all right, see ya, losers, I'm out of here.
Yeah. But that's why I thought, like, the closest we get to seeing something that might stick around are those conversations he has with the wizard. And like you said, it's going to take another book to see if it sticks around or not. He does also have another moment where he briefly has to do a double take as to what Jareb is doing as far as like spreading or allowing was it Morgana to use people as like experiments for magic.
Yeah.
So like he has that kind of maybe growth. It's just yeah, it's kind of like Deadpool. Well, yeah. But like I will say this to VS Drake, Deadpool didn't change because Deadpool didn't have to change in the way that Virio did to become a likable like anti-hero. He was a straight up villain to start with. He was.
Yeah.
he was a straight up villain. And so he needed to change to become an anti-hero. And I don't think that change to become an anti-hero was realistically earned. And he, like you said, the change is the fact that he actually showed some kind of empathy towards anybody whatsoever. The fact that he found some level of disgust in what Jared was doing, and yeah, he acted on revenge, but there's like these little moments where he's just like, "Oh damn, that's actually pretty fucked up," you know. But like, you know, so he does. It's just like it was. That's all it was. So it's just like, "Oh damn, that was fucked up." Like maybe that one guy had a point. Oh well, back to revenging. And like to me that smacks of a character that honestly it was hard to care about. That was just me. I had trouble caring about his revenge, and I had trouble caring about him as a character because the growth wasn't there, and also he's not nearly as funny as Deadpool, but that's another topic of conversation.
I was reasonably surprised that Beswick had Virio kill Jerem in the end.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
what made you surprised about that?
I feel like it would have been more satisfying if Virio had been able to let it go and move on.
Well, and that would have turned him into like a hero. Again, wouldn't have felt earned unless there was a lot more to this book. But you know, maybe that shows like true growth.
Sorry.
That's yeah. Fair enough, yes, Drake. Well played. So
All right, we've ragged on this book quite a bit. What did you like? What did you like about the book? What do you think was the strongest feature of the book?
I think the strongest feature was probably, yeah, I'll say the world building because in a very short amount of time, I got a feel for, okay, this is like a version of our world if magic was a dark, corrupting force. The magic system was solid, yeah, like V.S. Drake said, solid enough that that it felt like a real force in the world, but it was also like kind of mysterious and like nebulous enough to draw me in and want me to like know. It's like, okay, well, why is it a corrupting force? Why does like how does Morgana like use it without having the life draining effects that the other wizards did? Or you know, like I had a ton of questions, and like you get peeks at the answers, and that part felt probably the most consistent in the entire book, and the inconsistencies just drive like the questioning of it, and it fits within the political realm, like V.S. Strick noted as well, of the story. Like it makes sense. Like we're looking at like a small, you know, fiefdom within a kingdom, and there's the politics on this like smaller scale that we are linked to a bigger one, so are linked on a bigger scale, and we can see kind of like the first of the dominoes being flipped in something that could be much bigger, you know. And like for me to be interested in that, you have to do a good job of building the world for me to care about. So like the world building and in particular the magic system were the things that I was most engrossed by.
Yeah, I definitely agree that like Beswick did a really good job of saying a lot with a little. There were definitely problems I had with his writing, but the one thing that stood out to me, we use a word that we haven't used in a while here, was his prose. His writing style really felt like you were in medieval times. Like it really felt immersive for me, that I was actually there living out this little story. So I really think he did a really good job of immersing the reader in the world that he wanted to create.
I'd push back on that a little bit. I'll say the dialogue felt like that. I thought some of the switch that. The descriptions of the world were good and they felt like that. I thought some of the dialogue was pretty stilted, like just a little bit like clunky. But I think it got better as the book went along, and maybe this is an editing issue, but I'm like, when you can hear the dialogue getting better as the book goes along, that's somebody who's finding their voice while they're writing the book. And it didn't get edited to be consistent. And but yeah, like I thought it was a good job. Yeah, like you said, the prose of the book, as far as like how it was described and how you move through it. Some of the dialogue early on to me was a bit kind of clunky, but it's a fair point. Oh, it's self-published. That makes sense.
I didn't know this was self-published.
Okay, that makes sense. He didn't have anybody else looking out for him. Okay, dude. Or she. I don't know. The A could be anything. Or they, I guess. Yeah, so the dialogue, like, you can see an improvement through the book. So I guess good on you. Maybe the next book will be better.
VS Drake's question: do you think this book deserved the flash in the pan book talk craze?
I don't even know what that is.
Guessing it was popular, it was hyped for a while or something.
Yeah, I did see that it got like thrown around on TikTok, but I consider I'm not old. I'm just not. Oh, I mean, I am old, but like it's more of a fact that I'm not really on social media outside of this stuff. So, yeah, basically. I think considering the demographic that made it popular, it makes sense. But I think for a more mature and well-read person, this is gonna fall a bit short of that. So, like for book talk, given the primary range of ages that's using that, like their primary demographics, yeah, it makes sense.
Yeah, I think the big draw of this is it's now that we know it's based slightly off of a very popular story.
Mm-hmm.
It's an easy read. It's a quick read. So I think those two things cement it pretty well in the book talk craze level. So yeah, I think it deserves book talk craze. I don't think it necessarily has to be a good or exceptional book to be book talk craze worthy, but
yeah,
we can get into that later.
Oh, that's a whole other realm of topics.
Let's do one topic each.
Yeah, all right.
Call it good tonight.
Let's see. I can start us off. So, which, if any, of the tertiary characters stood out to you, and why?
Ah, man. So, yeah, that was one of the problems I had with this book. Is the attention that uh the two mains get is like 98% of the character work, and a lot of the other characters are just kind of shoved aside. I did like the doctor guy. I don't know what he technically is because he did
Dr. Wizard.
potions. He did
Or the
potions.
alchemist.
Yeah, but then he could do magic, and I don't know. I thought he was cool though. He served a fundamental function in this book though, where he was the opposite side of the coin to these two dirtbags who were leading the show, where they were all about themselves and their own greed, and then he was like, "What about the villagers?" You know what I mean?
Yeah, it makes sense. And like honestly, for a guy who didn't get much time, I was surprised at like how complex that character was. Um, so he was going to be one of my favorites. Also, again, like it's hard because like none of these characters like stood out enough for me to like. I could barely remember the main characters' names, and I read it twice. Um, uh, but I think I think one of the characters that I genuinely liked was I forget his name, but like the kid that they rescued, the one like the guy who's just like he's got a bigger part to play. Like he
Yeah.
was, the guy who's eventually going to become like the true hero type. Um, I liked him mostly because he was just like a, uh, he was a very Dorian type. I think a very like he knows what he's about. He Yeah, a Lancelot. Yeah, he's a very like Lancelot Paladin type, and I thought like it was a pretty well written like this. It makes sense that he has only like like that he is the type of character who would be so one note's the wrong word, but so focused on like a very specific way of living because he was young enough to like latch on to this and he became he became that because he had to. He was raised by a knight, and he's young enough not to have a more complex view of the world, but he also has the fortitude to like stand behind it, which was kind of cool to see. But again, there's like you get only these little snippets of them, and it was hard.
Yeah. Yeah, the kid was definitely an interesting character. I agree. I agree with what VS Jake was saying about calling him the Paladin.
Yeah. So
I like the breakdown of class structure there.
I mean, yeah, that is the quintessential paladin, though, isn't it, Lancelot?
Well, I mean, we had the rogue, the chick who likes to stay in the shadows, the barbarian, the guy who gets captured and stuff. And we had the ranger, which was the main character. The cleric was Merlin.
The sorceress was Morgana.
Yep. So it fits. Why don't we go ahead and jump into final thoughts?
Oh, I thought you. Oh, you didn't have another question then?
Nah, let's just go ahead and jump right to final thoughts.
Okay. So I'll start off. I usually love all things like Robin Hood, medieval England type of stuff. So I was like, really feeling the world building and this version of magic that was dark and like corruptive. again, the characters fell so short for me that like I genuinely had like the first time I read this book, struggled to get through it. The second time I went through, and the only thing that kept me going was looking for the like 1-to-1s with Robin Hood. And I like the premise. I like the plot. I like the world building. I just could not get behind the character development and the characters. And again, like half the dialogue was just kind of to me personally. So, not my favorite book. I can see why some people like it. I can absolutely see why some people don't. I might recommend this more as like a starter type of book for like somebody who wants an easy read and wants to get into fantasy, because that's kind of what it is, and you don't want to have to think too much about it. But for my money, I like something with a little more oomph and texture behind it. So I don't know that I would like loudly recommend it, but I'm intrigued enough by certain aspects of this that I might try out another one. And especially seeing the growth of the author through the book, I might try out other books to see if the author continues to get better, because there's notes of something very good there, like these little notes of it. And I would hope that they could potentially shine through, maybe in a different story with different characters or with a little more time.
Yeah, I found the anti-hero main character part kind of interesting. It's a different take on a story, you know, following somebody who's not really hero material. You know, that part was interesting. The immersion was pretty nice. It's really short, so it's not like you're going to waste your time reading it.
Yeah.
Coming down to a would or would not recommend, it's tough to say would recommend, but I think I am going to go ahead and say I would recommend it. It does have some interesting parts, and you know, the immersion part is great. So
Yeah.
would recommend.
Very soft wood. Like a balsa.
V.S. Drake says they would recommend it. He loved the King Arthur themed book and intends to continue the series. Solid side piece.
Yeah, I think that's actually one of the redeeming qualities of this, is that it's pretty short, and it's not like you said, it's not like a waste of time to read. It's just like, if you want something quick and dirty, this will do it. But I do think I'm with V.S. Drake, and I do intend to continue the series in the hopes that like the world gets flushed out and the characters continue to get a little bit better, and hopefully so too does the dialogue.
You know, a lot of authors really go for a kind of mundane, middle of the road voice, and I think Beswick really stood out with expressing his voice.
Mm-hmm.
Which,
oh yeah,
you know,
there's definitely like it, and I think those parts are the parts that are those glimmers of something potentially great, you know. And hopefully Beswick continues to, like, as far as I can tell, there's a bunch of these books out there. So
yeah, yep.
Let's see. I think there's 5 or 6 of these, or no, it's 5, 7. There's like 9 books that they've written. So
Beswick has written 14 books.
Oh, 14.
Yeah.
Okay, I digress then.
Levanthria has 4 books in it, and then he's got a couple other, one other series, and then a couple of standalones, I think.
All right. Well, there you have it. This may be one of those things where if I want something to fill in between like some bigger books or something, I may just like pop one of these in. So yeah, like V.S. Drake said, good little side piece. Speaking
Yeah.
of which, why don't we wrap up and talk about our side pieces real quick?
Let's quick go over next books, and
Oh
then we'll
yes.
we'll hit up side pieces. Excuse me. Where is the thing with the? There it is. All right. June 29th is our next meetup for The Eye of the World by Robert Jordan. That's not a surprise. The new book to note for July 20th is People We Meet on Vacation by Emily Henry. So it's a vacation vibes book, which matches very well with our beach read from last year, which was also by Emily Henry.
And that's right, V.S. Drake. Big Book Summer. That is referring to The Eye of the World by Robert Jordan. It is a much bigger book, so please begin now. So you have plenty of time to read it. I believe it is well over 600 pages, which hours-wise usually translates to over 18. So please get on that soon if you would like to join us for our discussion at the end of June. Also, coming up in August, we are going to be doing back to school. So that is all things YA or school-related books. So
nice.
So
School category or young adult.
Yeah, young adult or school category. We'll take it all. So if you got anything for us, we have a little bit of extra time, so we'll give you a little time before the vote to tell us what you would like to read.
Yeah, Eye of the World comes in at 30 hours for audio. Just work.
Yeah, get started.
Spiderwick, yeah, V.S. Drake. That's a good example.
That'd be a great example. Yep, so get us those recommendations if you would like to have us vote on a book of your choice. So
yeah. Side piece time. All right. Excited to talk about your side pieces.
Oh boy. So my side pieces, I reread / finished Rhythm of War. I had to have a break in between that after reading the first three really quickly. I got partway into Rhythm of War and I was like, okay, I need a little bit of a break. I've read a lot of these in a very short amount of time. And so when I went back to it, I was just like, nope, I'm reading this from the beginning again. So I just finished Rhythm of War. Hooray! And then I also read Song of Achilles, which is a retelling of the tale of it's the retelling of essentially the Iliad, but from the perspective of Patroclus as it relates to his life and how it revolved around Achilles. So it's the life of Patroclus and it folds into the Iliad. And honestly, fantastic book. Highly recommend for anybody who loves the classics. And honestly, there's a romance element to it that I thought was probably one of the better romance elements that I've read in any of the books that we've read on that I've read since the beginning of the show. So highly recommend that one, and of course Rhythm of War. But how much more do we need to say about Brando Sando when we have 2 whole months dedicated to him this year, October and November? So look forward to that.
To be determined the details for that. But
yes.
Yeah, for my side pieces, I finished another ACOTAR book, book 4. I'm about halfway through book 5. I started Jurassic Park Lost World via Drake. Also read Jurassic Park Lost World. So I got a lot of books going on right now. So
yeah, I did Lost World before the last book. So yeah, there's been a lot of reading going on recently.
I'm excited to get to the Eye of the World, though, and I have a feeling I'm gonna jump right into book 2 and 3, and however far I get in the next 2 months. So,
Well, yeah, I mean, I think there's like 12 of them in the Wheel
yeah,
of
something
Time
like that.
series.
12 or 14, somewhere in there.
Yep. So, yeah, it should be interesting. All right. Well, that said, if anybody really wants to get a hold of us, you know how on dinosable.com, and also hit us up on our socials if you want to join the Discord and have even more fun. But for now, thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next book.
Yeah, see you guys next book. Via Strike, you gotta wait. We'll comment later. Meet you in the comment section later, Via Strike.
Or the Discord channel.